Thank you for joining us on our news desk yet again. The headlines first. Chief Government Spokesperson Doris Leah has confirmed that Cabinet, during its special sitting on the 4th of December, approved the processing and export of cannabis for economic and medicinal purposes. The Zambia Police Service says at least 10 people living with albinism are murdered every year in the country. And People's Alliance for Change, PAC President Endiford Banda says the request by the Zambian government for the recall of U.S. Ambassador to Zambia Daniel Foot is misplaced. Here now is the news in detail. Chief Government Spokesperson Doris Leah has confirmed that Cabinet, during its 22nd special sitting on the 4th December 2019, gave approval in principle to the Ministerial Technical Committee for the cultivation, processing and exporting of cannabis for economic and medicinal purposes. In a statement obtained by QTV News, Ms. Leah says the Ministerial Technical Committee comprises of the Ministries of Justice, Defense, Home Affairs, Finance, National Development, Planning, Commerce, Trade and Industry, Agriculture and Health. She says Cabinet directed the Ministry of Health to provide overall leadership and coordinate the issuance of licenses for the cultivation, processing and export of cannabis for medicinal purposes under the Dangerous Drugs Cap 95. Ms. Celia adds that Cabinet also directed the Ministry of Health to ensure that applicable policy guidelines and procedures are followed, as well as ensure that the implementation is within the existing policy guidelines and overall legal framework in consultation with any relevant ministries and other relevant stakeholders. She further states that the Ministry of Health has been directed to provide Cabinet with periodic update on the implementation of the Cabinet decision. All People's Congress Party President Nelson Musoni has condemned the decision by Cabinet to legalize the licensed cultivation of marijuana for export and medicinal purposes. Mr. Musoni fears that this might lead to an increase in criminality levels and add a new dimension of addiction to substance abuse among the youth. He has charged that it is the desperation to make money that has driven government to resort to allowing the cultivation of cannabis for export purposes. Cabinet, during its sitting on Wednesday, resolved that companies wishing to trade in marijuana for export will have to pay $250,000 annual license fees, while the growth of the crop will be strictly supervised by the Zambia National Service, ZNS. But Mr. Musoni says there are grave consequences of such hurried and premature decisions, adding that no bona fide self-respecting Christian nation can allow for the cultivation and export of marijuana because it destroys and ruins lives.
We think that it will abet lawlessness and criminality. It will spike criminality levels in our country. Even if the government is broke, but the solution does not lie in the legalization of marijuana. We all must condemn the legalization of marijuana. We're a Christian nation, and we know that marijuana, whether you call it daga, at the center of it is that these drugs destroy lives, young lives. And therefore, we think that it is an ill-timed piece of legislation, which we think that the government is trying to raise revenue by legalizing the cultivation of the drug. So we think that it's a wrong way of raising revenue. We condemn it in the strongest terms.
At least 10 people living with albinism are murdered annually in Zambia, the Zambia Police have revealed. Zambia Police Assistant Commissioner, who is also Assistant Director for Community Services, Kennedy Mumbi, disclosed this during the first ever National Forum for People Living with Albinism held under the theme Reframing the Confederation Around Albinism and Instigating Change in Lusaka. Mr. Mumbi states that the police are concerned about the safety of persons living with albinism, which is why the service is closely working with various organizations to protect albinos and ensure that perpetrators of crimes against albinos are brought to book. Here is a report.
Albinism affects every society and cuts across age, gender, ethnicity, and all areas of humanity. Therefore, the inclusion and promotion of rights of persons with albinism requires concerted efforts to effectively address challenges they face. It is against this background that the first ever National Albinism Forum has been held in Lusaka under the theme Reframing the Conversation Around Albinism and Instigating Change. Turaida Numisisi from the Zambia Albinism Matters organization brought out some of the reasons why persons living with albinism fail to come out and speak out on their needs and concerns.
We fail to stand up for ourselves. We can't stand up for ourselves to talk, to express what's really inside of us, what we go through, because we have that low self-esteem. But today is a day that we are going to express what we are feeling, what we go through, and what we want, and the help, the kind of help that we need. The other thing is that we're going to talk about these ritual killings. The ritual killings that have gone uninvestigated. The ritual killings that we just received news, this person has been killed, they've been killed, but it goes uninvestigated.
Fortune seekers believe that choosing albino body parts can make one rich, and this myth has led to many people with albinism being killed for their body parts. Ram Anabek is the chairperson for Albinism Multi-Purpose Organization, and he challenged the police to effectively handle cases of killings of albinos.
We do not see the police act accordingly to our expectation, not at all. As a matter of fact, we are quite disappointed. We have on the provinces problems. The police do not act in the speed we expect. There's all the time issues of budget. There's all the time issue of pay for the vehicle. And obviously people living with albinism do not have money to pay for any vehicle for any authorities.
Kennedy Mumbi is Zambia Police Assistant Director for Community Services, and he acknowledged that crimes against persons living with albinism are rife, with at least 10 albinos being killed in the country annually.
Together, let's try to find ways in which we can actually address the vice. I don't have the statistics at hand right now, but we have it on record that at least not less than 10 people living with albinism are murdered every year. And those are very alarming statistics.
Government was represented through Ministry of Community Development Chief Social Welfare Officer Stephen Chiwele, who read the speech on behalf of the minister.
Despite the efforts that are being made to promote and protect the rights of persons with albinism, the government is concerned with the increasing gruesome attacks on persons with albinism. I call upon every citizen to be protective towards persons with albinism. My ministry will, as a matter of urgency, engage Ministry of Home Affairs on what other specific measures to be put in place to combat this criminality.
It is therefore hoped that through this forum, change on matters involving persons living with albinism will be instigated and protection for these people will be enhanced. Nakaonga reporting for KTV News in
People's Alliance for Change PAC President Endiford Banda says the request by the Zambian government for the United States government to recall its ambassador to Zambia for criticizing the jailing of a gay couple is misplaced. Daniel Foot came under fire after he expressed dismay over a High Court ruling last month that sentenced two gay men to 15 years imprisonment for having consensual sex. Mr. Banda has told QTV News that the manner in which the head of state has handled the issue has brought shivers to other ambassadors and high commissioners accredited to Zambia who might want to comment on the happenings in the country. He says government should respect divergent views and address the concerns raised by Mr. Foot in a statement as opposed to being emotional.
One of the issues that donors look for is the fact that you have a tolerant government that is able to accept divergent views. So we believe that the PF government is allergic, and I think they grow goosebumps every time someone criticizes them, and it's not the way democracy is supposed to work. So I think this is a very negative image for our country internationally, that we have decided to take this step just because one of our partners, the representative of our partners, the US, expressed his opinions about the relationship between Zambia and US. I think for us that's where this was all about. It was more about the strengthened relationship, and I think if our government was thinking right, what they would do is to actually ensure that the smoothened relationship between US and Zambia.
Meanwhile, Mr. Banda has demanded that the mobile issuance of national registration cards be extended to all parts of the country to allow all eligible Zambians acquire the documents. Mr. Banda says his party is concerned that the Department of National Registration has concentrated the exercise in PF strongholds such as Luapula and Northern Provinces, as confirmed by PF Secretary General Davis Mwila when he directed party structures in the Northern Province to ensure that 45,000 new members have NRCs.
What we have seen and heard, and confirmed by the Patriotic Front Secretary General, Mr. Davis Mwila, where he categorically said that the issues of NRCs must be enhanced in PF strongholds, I think is misplaced. This is not about PF or any other political party. This is about people's right to own a national registration card. In any event, all the people across the country who have attained the age of 16 and 18 must get this NRC so that they are eligible to vote in 2021. So there is no way of disadvantaging people because they are perceived to be in opposition strongholds. Therefore, we would like to emphasize and demand that the National Registration Office must not be used by the PF to focus the registration of people in PF strongholds. Let this exercise go across the country.
Government has engaged China Jiangsu International Economic and Technical Cooperation Group to construct the state-of-the-art multi-facility international conference center at the Mulungushi International Conference Center in Lusaka, ahead of the 2022 African Union Heads of State Summit to be hosted by Zambia. The multi-facility conference center will have a 2,500-seat conference hall, one 600-seat medium meeting room, one 400-seat multi-function hall, 60-seat group meeting rooms, among other facilities. Housing and Infrastructure Development Permanent Secretary Charles Mshota says the current Mulungushi International Conference Center will not be tampered with. Mr. Mshota says the Zambia National Service, ZNS, will soon start clearing land at the site, while the contractor China Jiangsu is expected to move on site in January 2020 to start construction works. He says following Zambia's selection to host the 2022 AU Heads of State Summit, the Chinese government has provided a grant to support Zambia construct the venue for the summit. Mr. Mshota says the contractor has since assured him that the facility will be completed by 2021, adding that once completed, the Chinese government will provide long-term technical support for the project. He says government appreciates the gesture by the Chinese government in providing all the resources for the project. This is contained in a statement issued by Jeff Banda, Ministry of Housing and Infrastructure Development Public Relations Officer. Zambia Agriculture Research Institute, ZARI Senior Agriculture Research Officer Gabriel Monkombwe has called for the domestication of farmers' rights. Speaking at the Zambia Alliance for Agroecology and Biodiversity Media Workshop on the interface between climate change, biodiversity, sustainable diets and social equality, Mr. Monkombwe says realizing farmers' rights means enabling farmers to maintain and develop crop genetic resources as they have done since the dawn of agriculture. Mr. Monkombwe notes that despite Zambia ratifying the international treaty on plant genetic resources for food and agriculture in 2004, government has not put in place specific policy and legal measures in place for a budget to implement the treaty or to realize the farmers' rights. He has since urged farmers and civil society organizations to spearhead the call to have farmers' rights domesticated.
Because at the moment what happens, materials are shared at global level. They are being shared. But how do countries get benefit? Countries pump money in the treaty for access and benefit sharing. And then there is a core. That is the FAO gives a core for proposals. And the organizations, non-government organizations, religious organization whatsoever, government institutions, they can come up with proposals and submit them to FAO. When a call is given, submit them to FAO for funding. If the proposal goes through, then the FAO is going to support that organization.
And speaking after a tour of the controversial forest reserve number 27, concerned citizen Barry Milimo has appealed to government to immediately stop the infrastructure development currently taking place in the degazetted forest reserve.
So if we get to allow these people to maybe grab plots around here, we'll lose a lot of things here. We've got different species of animals. We've got haze. We've got spring air. Okay, we've got different animals around here. So it is very much important to protect this place because this is where everyone looks upon. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So who should protect it?
Especially us. Us, especially, I like your company. So we're going to fight for this.
Us as ordinary people?
Yeah, especially us ordinary people. Ordinary people, we should not hand over this to only whites, because I hear people saying, oh, this thing is being pursued by whites, what, no. What I would say, okay, let me just allude on that. Whites, quite all right, they've played a greater role when it comes to nature reserve.
And environmentalist Robert Chimambo has called on the media to help save forest number 27 by highlighting the negative impact of degazetting the forest.
So you find kachiwoli akajaka from the water. Kanaka wanyamazai. Ndani azi wanyamazai. They were sanitary engineers. So their role was to make sure that waste is, because in those days there were no septic tanks, no pit latrines, especially we had bucket called night soil service. This gentleman, bishop, whatever you call him, he was jumping all over the place when they introduced that biodigester. Is it in Jawama? This thing closed the system. But that is the system we had here. The whole material, when they made Chingwere, you had a biodigester. Because the water table was high, so it was a closed system. So the city council would come like Chazurama, pumping and the time. That was the system which was there in terms of sewage management.
The Small-Scale Farmers Development Association, SAFADA, has noted the need for equipment and technical services to be made available to small-scale farmers in the country for them to be effective. SAFADA Director Boyd Mowe says a lack of proper farming equipment and technical services has been one of the biggest challenges the farmers in the country face. Mr. Mowe says with the increase in small-scale farmers comes the need for accessible equipment. He says currently, for many starting out on small plots, the tractors, harvesters, machinery and other farm equipment that may be needed are expensive. Mr. Mowe states that inasmuch as government through the Ministry of Agriculture is doing its part in providing inputs, those have to be complemented by the provision of equipment and technical services for enhanced growth and productivity.
In one way or another, I blame the farmers because they are so rigid and so dependent on what is already existing. They don't want to test or try other avenues or try other technologies because of fear, the fear to lose. So as a father, we always take necessary steps to ensure that farmers are sensitized, and we help the farmers to understand the farming system using different technologies and equipments. By the way, we have got partners who have decided to put up an agriculture center of excellence. This is where probably everything that probably have asked us to explain in terms of how farmers will access the implements and the equipments. The partnership with the Israeli partner will really help the farmers to access equipments, cheap equipments that will help them to go into production.
The opposition MMD says it will clean up the government system of all corrupt elements once it returns to power in 2021. MMD President Nevas Mumba says his party intends to make Zambia among the first 5 corrupt-free countries in the world. Dr. Mumba says the MMD's New Hope government will achieve this by implementing a non-partisan anti-corruption program. In an interview with QTV News, Dr. Mumba has disclosed that under this anti-corruption program, the fight against corruption in the country will be non-selective. He says this means that once the MMD returns to power, it will be very unfashionable for anyone to think of engaging in corrupt practices.
And the New Hope movement for multi-party democracy, my vision is to bring Zambia all the way up within the first 5 countries of corrupt-free nations. And we can do it because the program we have to fight corruption is not partisan, it is wholesome. And once we get into government, it will be very unfashionable for anybody to think of corruption. It will be totally unadvisable for anybody to attempt to be corrupt, because what we're going to put in place is going to demand that anybody who's implicated in that may not wish that he were born, because we are going to be very, very free.
Lusaka Province Minister Boma Lusambo has been asked to state whether or not Chieftainess Nkomesha Mukamambo II is lying by accusing PF cadres of having disrupted the Chikwela Makumbi traditional ceremony. UPND Lusaka Province Youth Wing spokesperson Otis Bwalia says Mr. Lusambo is insinuating that the chieftainess is a liar by insisting that it was not the PF cadres that caused the fracas at the traditional ceremony. Mr. Bwalia has wondered why a senior government official at the level of provincial minister can defend the kind of hooliganism that was displayed at the traditional ceremony. He has told QTV News that instead of defending the PF cadres, Mr. Lusambo should have instead rendered an apology to the traditional leader.
We call upon Boma Lusambo, the Lusaka Province Minister, to unreservedly apologize to Her Royal Highness Chieftainess Nkomesha Mukamambo II for the trouble and embarrassment she has suffered so far at the hands of the PF. Bowman must apologize for the insults and for labeling her as a liar. We also want to appeal to the minister to tone down on his conduct and attitude in public and towards citizens of this country, because his behavior is so unbecoming and citizens are getting so agitated and actually are getting angry, not only to him or with him, but with the entire patriotic front. The behavior and conduct of the PF cadres at the last Chikwela Makumbi ceremony was so disrespectful, distasteful, awful, and un-Zambian. And it is also very unfortunate and disappointing that the caliber of a provincial minister.
The government has challenged the Zambian entrepreneurs to claim their place in the SADC region. Commerce, Trade and Industry Minister Christopher Yaluma says government continues to craft policies for entrepreneurs to flourish and grow their businesses beyond borders. Mr. Yaluma says government has also made it possible for entrepreneurs to partner with the Zambia Development Agency ZDA in growing their businesses. Speaking when he officiated at the 2 days SADC Men's Entrepreneurship Conference in Lusaka, Mr. Yaluma encouraged entrepreneurs to submit bankable proposals to the ZDA for possible support. Mr. Yaluma says government support through the ZDA does not only come with capacity building and access to finance, but include access to business information and technology.
This conference is unique because it presents an opportunity for us to open our eyes to the various prospects available in various industries and an occasion to strategically position ourselves to be mentored by the social networks that we share and establish here today. Gentlemen, the government is keen to enhance private sector-led growth and has been working to create an enabling environment for business, as evidenced by enactment of the Business Regulatory Act of 2014 that was meant to create a cost-effective business regulation framework in Zambia. As a result of our business environment reforms, Zambia is now ranked 8th in SADC and 4th in COMESA in terms of ease of doing business.
Speaking earlier, convener of the conference, Joseph Mushalika, explained that the 2 days conference is meant to discuss, among other things, challenges entrepreneurs face to access finance. Dr. Mshaliga states that the conference will also look at lessons that can be learned from other local entrepreneurs that own big businesses in the country.
And so all we are doing in this room is to say, you men who changed your ideas into projects, show us the way. We are delighted that government is here, and especially a key component of government in the name of the Minister of Commerce, so that the men who are here can respond to the question, all these huge amounts of money we hear about in the CEC, all these huge amounts of money we hear at ZBA, what key are we using to access the land? Why are we failing to be shareholders in the resources that are ours? I wouldn't aid appropriately if I don't make recognition of our friends that have traveled from Malawi and our friends that have traveled from Zimbabwe. These countries are twin countries.
The two-day SADC Men's Entrepreneurship Conference is being held under the theme, Are You a Man? Can the Real Men Stand? The Center for Trade Policy and Development says the move by the Zimbabwean government to remove import duty on maize is a strategic move that Zambia should take advantage of. CTPD Head of Research Brian Mwenga says it is time for Zambia to tap into the yearning market which has been made available. He has told QTV News in Lusaka that what the Zambian government needs to do now is to establish proper channels through which small-scale farmers can become major export suppliers of grain merchandising. Recently, the Zimbabwean cabinet removed import controls on maize and wheat flour following a severe drought that reduced availability of grain in the Zimbabwean confectionery sector.
I think we realized that they've had a deficit for quite some time. So the government there thought it would be cheaper for them to be able to import maize from other countries, as opposed to imposing an import duty. The farmers can be able to, maybe the suppliers can be able to just bring it for free in those countries. Now, for a country like Zambia, which usually has a maize supply, it's about time we tapped into that market because it's already an available market. Now, what we need to do is, through the government, to establish proper market channels that our small-scale farmers can be major suppliers to that particular country. And then we should also make it cheap for them to be able to tap into that particular market. And another issue that we should also consider is to step up our supplies, because we know that as much as if we produce more, we'll have a market in Zimbabwe, just like we have a market in Congo DR and even Angola. So it's about helping our farmers to step up their production so that we can be able to maximize from the available markets. What we've had is a challenge of the local market. I think usually the FRA will pay the farmers less, but I think now is the right time for us to be able to tap into the foreign markets where our farmers will be able to maximize benefits.
25 Zambia Airways cabin crew members have graduated from the Ethiopian Airline Aviation Academy. Government, through the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, sent the cabin crew for training in various cabin crew professions following the establishment of the national carrier Zambia Airways. Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia, Emmanuel Mwamba, says it is envisaged that the crew will fully apply their expertise and experience gained during the intense 3 months training period. He says their training will also contribute to achieving the African Union Agenda 2063 that's aspirations that seek to improve the aviation sector in Africa. In a speech read on his behalf by Discharge Affairs at the Zambian Embassy, John Chisanga, Mr. Mwamba says the airline will boost both tourism and trade, as Zambia would have an opportunity to manufacture goods and transport them without challenges across the continent. And Ethiopian Aviation Academy Managing Director Solomon Kabere says Ethiopia Aviation Academy continues to be one of the leading training aviation academies in the world.
Your training here was not just in vain, but will contribute towards the attainment of African Agenda 2063 aspiration, which include, among other things, the free movement of people and goods across the continent. I urge you to make the African airlines the best, not only in the continent, but the rest of the world. With your efforts and confidence contribution, Africa is well with the increased share of the market in the aviation industry.
The European Aviation Academy has today trained a total of over 60,000 aviation professionals in different fields. And today's graduates are part of that achievement for the Academy. Ethiopian Airlines is a pioneer in aviation, and Ethiopian Aviation Academy significantly contributed to that effort in developing the aviation industry, not only in Ethiopia, but in Africa.
Zambia Association of Manufacturers ZAM President Ezekiel Sekele has bemoaned the continued illicit trade of products such as tobacco, beverages, among others in the manufacturing industry. Mr. Sekele says the country is losing revenue through illegally exported goods. Speaking when ZAM awarded an Environmental Sustainability Award to Java Foods Limited for contributing to sustainable development, Mr. Sekele has noted the need to stamp out those who are manufacturing illegally in the country. Mr. Sekele has acknowledged that small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, can help resolve some of the country's most pressing challenges by providing much-needed jobs, products and services.
And I know through you, you're going to support and motivate and encourage and convince other Zambians who may be doubtful in terms of their growth. And I'm aware that in the manufacturing sector where you are, Java Foods, there's a lot of illicit trade happening now. Talk about the edible oils. Talk about the beverages manufacturing company. Talk about the tobacco, the water. There's so much. And together we can work to curb, to fight that illicit, so that the government, through the revenue authority, can get the taxes. And seeing companies like this that are transparent, we can see how they're operating, they're paying taxes, they are contributing towards the economic growth, creating employment. We need to support such companies and weed out, stamp out those who are manufacturing in the middle of the night. And there are so many. And we continue to work with all our members because we know that as ZAM, we are only strong as our members' strength.
And speaking after receiving the award, Java Foods Limited Chief Executive Officer Monica Msonda has reaffirmed her company's commitment to providing nutritious foods made from local products. And Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry Chief Economist Margaret Chikuba is elated to see the local companies producing local foods that are recognized on the international market.
I also want to say something really important about the Sustainability Awards, because I think people, when they think sustainability, just think environment, and I'm so glad you focus on health. Really very important this year. As you've seen, there are some people in our country at the moment who are hungry, and the aspect of nutrition has become an important factor. And there are not many companies who focus on nutrition. Java focuses on nutrition. We focus on affordable nutrition. We're using locally produced raw materials to create food that is good for you. Thank you. I should say that I think with our Proudly Zambian campaign, this is a very good example to use for our Proudly Zambian campaign. We really are happy to see that our Zambian products can be supported and promoted, and also to hear that it's not just in Zambia that the product is making a name and an impact, but out there. And it's very, very delighting to also see that the product is not only concentrating on business, but you are also caring for the health of the Zambian.
That item concludes the news at this hour. Thank you so much for watching. But before I take a run, here is a recap of stories in the headlines. Chief Government Spokesperson Doris Leah has confirmed that Cabinet, during its special sitting on the 4th of December 2019, approved the processing and export of cannabis for economic and medicinal purposes. The Zambia Police Service says at least 10 people living with albinism are murdered every year in the country. And People's Alliance for Change Park President Andy Ford Banda says the request by the Zambian government for the recall of U.S. Ambassador to Zambia Daniel Foote is misplaced. That's the news. Bye-bye. God bless.